How are you doing out there? Let's talk some more about nonverbal communication. And I want to quickly just take a few minutes and go through the various nonverbal channels. Seems to be a term that is being used widely. I kind of thought of the term on my own, not reading the internet much and really keeping my nose in textbooks about nonverbals. And that can be good and that can sometimes be limiting. But nonverbal channels, the channels, and I like that term. Messages come to us through various channels. Although this isn't like a television where you change the channel, or the internet where you go from website to website. These are all coming at you at once, all of them, all the time, every time you interact with people. And I also talk about not watching the channels, but I talk about it in terms of nonverbal listening. It's both listening and watching, and smelling, and touching, and what's that in other sense? Taste? Oh, I suppose that's a nonverbal channel, just not one that's commonly used, not in the textbooks, that's for sure. But we take in nonverbal information from all of our senses. And so when I talk about nonverbal listening, that's paying attention with all your senses to the messages that are being sent. There are, well, let me just put a list very quickly of the channels. And I did peruse a number of websites to try to find how many channels is everybody agreeing on, and a lot of disagreement there. So I just went through and picked all the ones that I thought were valid, added some to most of the lists with some that are in other lists. I don't know that I left anything out. You know, people are on pretty much in agreement on what these are. But we can just go down this posture and gait. I've talked about posture as the first channel there. Your physical body is a channel. Are you in shape? Are you healthy? Are there any deformities in your body? Anything like that that people would notice that may seem to tell them something about you. Manner of dress would go along with physical body, but we make conscious choices about our manner of dress. I think I would include whatever hairstyle you've got in your manner of dress as well, because that is something that, well, my daughter changes her hairstyle regularly, almost daily for a while it seemed. Your use of personal space is a channel. Our gestures are a channel, a couple kinds of gestures. We'll talk more in depth about each one of these as the semester goes on. But gestures that are very intentional. There's two things I want you to get from this lecture. That would be an intentional gesture. Other gestures are not intentional necessarily. They just kind of go along with our speech. When our hands just do things for us. I get a kick out of watching orators and they're giving sermons or speeches or whatever, and there's this one like holding the idea in your hand, and I know they do this one intentionally, you know, using that finger just kind of like this. Some very intentional ones that they just don't come across as natural. Touch, nonverbal messages are sent, and I've been experimenting with that, just shaking people's hands. There's one touch, but reaching out beyond that and just touching their elbow briefly. And often that is returned. It's a warmer way to shake hands. Other people shake hands and go in for the quick shoulder hug of some sort. Touch is just a very, and it'll be, I've said posture is the primal nonverbal channel. Touch, I would say, is the most powerful nonverbal channel. Our eye behavior, intentional and unintentional. We can make very specific expressions, roll our eyes at somebody, literally falling asleep while somebody's talking. That's eye behavior. That's kind of more unintentional, a little more involved than just the eyes there. But our facial displays, often very intentional, or we're just in a sour mood, And we're just letting people know we're exasperated with something, we're depressed. And I used to go around with that hung dog face just to get attention, I think. And people would say, Jerry, what's wrong? Everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. You can hear it in my voice, very intentional, yet I think it was more of like a generalized attention thing. I just want people to know I'm not happy, and I don't care who knows it, but I'm kind of doing it on purpose. Very easy to change all these things. Our vocal inflections often very spontaneous. A lot of things slip out, but often very purposive, and we add them in there or withhold them consciously. Sometimes it seems subconsciously, but I think it's more of like in my life, I made a decision. I'm just not going to be very expressive with my face or my voice. I just kind of turned the dials way down in my brain, and my vocal inflection was still there, and my facial expressions were still there, but they were very minimized. And I've had to make a conscious decision to ratchet them up, turn them up, back up to number 7 or 8. Some people are on 10 all the time. Smell, another interesting nonverbal channel. The textbook I've always used in the past doesn't cover smell. But, yeah, we're very self-conscious of our smell at times. We want to shower regularly and smell good for people. We use colognes, perfumes to smell a certain way. Oh, my dog is really into this one. She will find very interesting things out in the forest and roll around in it to get that smell all over her. Chronemics is our use of time. That's kind of the technical term. I could have just put time there, but that's a fairly common term. And we have technical terms for about half of these we'll pick up as we go. Chronemics, how do you use time? Do you multitask, or do you do one thing at a time? Do you give somebody a lot of your time, showing them I see you as in higher status, or I value you a lot? Or do you withhold your time and just short, quick phone calls, don't have time to talk to you? Sends meta messages about status, again, about your value for people. Artifacts, I'm wearing one right here, got a hat on, could have chose a different hat. This is kind of a practical hat, keeps rain off of my head and a little warmer in the winter time, but we're sending a message as well with our artifacts, kind of like our manner of dress, chosen beforehand, chosen from our closets with very specific messages in mind. Also my glasses, very conscious choice of the style of frames that I used. And we do all that. Our artifacts communicate much. Now I want to talk a little bit about body language here. Body language is a term I haven't really liked much. I am not going to fully come around to embracing it, but I see the reason for it. There are some channels that probably our body communicates the most with, and I don't want to call it a language though. Body communication might be a lot more accurate, but that's the popular term. It's hard to go against the grain here. But our posture and our gait, the way we walk, your style of walk, or even we all have a style of walking, but some days you walk fast, some days you walk slow. Some days there's just some energy in your step, and other days you're just dragging around. We communicate with our body in these ways, though. Our physical characteristics, our attractiveness, our lack of it, the health of our body, our fitness, all of this communicates our manner of dress, chosen beforehand, but we're communicating with our body here, like the young lady in the first image with the red dress on, communicating something to somebody, and maybe inviting people to come and consider her as a girlfriend. Who knows what she's thinking there. Proxemics, our personal space. We make choices about those distances, but a lot of times they just happen. We could make choices about all of these. My take is with the idea of body messages is that they are largely subconscious, and it's just happening. We're sending out the messages, but whatever messages they are, we're kind of, it's more of an attitude we're putting out there. It's more of an openness or a closeness. They're more general. It's not like you're going to look at me and look at these different channels that can rightly be called body language or body messaging, and you're going to not be able to read what's in my mind. But you can get an idea of what I may be thinking, or what my attitude may be, or if I'm open to a conversation or closed to a conversation. Oculesics, there's a nice word, right? Eye behavior. Proxemics, another technical term. Write down these yellow terms, except for body language there, and start using them. Proxemics are distance from people. We make choices about that, and sometimes it just happens. Olfactics, there's the smell. And yeah, we make choices about that, but once the cologne is on, you're not thinking about it. You're wearing it, or you're not. Other channels are not so neatly classified body language. And we'd look at these here, kinesics, or our gestures, often very purposive. We're typically communicating and talking when we're using gestures, or we're mad at somebody that just cut us off on the highway and give them a certain gesture. Very purposive. I can't call these body language. They are very conscious, and we are trying to communicate with them, and it just so happens that it's easier to do it this way than saying things, though speech often comes with it. Haptics, touching people, not quite the same as body language in the classic sense here, but touching people is very meaningful, showing warmth, showing openness, showing just appreciation for people, a desire for a deeper friendship. Eye behavior, often very conscious when we look at somebody a little too long, or realize I'm staring at you, I better look off to the side here. Our facial display is often connected with what we're saying at the time, or we want people to know this tastes horrible, so we give that expression, or I can't wait, those happy expressions. And some people just have faces that are amazingly expressive, and other people I think have just dialed them down like I did for so many years. And even when I think I'm being very expressive, I'm probably just about average. Our vocalics, vocal inflections, we're talking while this is happening, definitely not the body that's communicating, but we stuff all sorts of information in with the words we're saying to help clarify our communication. We want people to know what we're feeling while we say it. Our use of time, no, that's not a body thing. It's just an often conscious choices, or not so conscious. They don't realize they just cut somebody off in conversation and don't give them the same turn at talk that I would take, or I've got to go, I'm really busy, have to go wash my hair, and click and hang up on somebody. Our artifacts, again, things we're using to impress people, this isn't the body. So don't think of nonverbal communication as body language. Body language is just a section in the book that has those channels that typically are performed through the body, and often without our conscious awareness, but often with, or both at the same time. The other channels do not fall under that. And my opposition to the term is that use of it exclusively, and I think you're going to tend to tune out touch, facial expression, vocal expression, chronemics, meta messages even, all of these channels that send so much information. But if you're focused on people's, if their arms are crossed, and how far away they're sitting from you, how their legs are crossed, you can miss all of those other things, and you will not be very good at communicating nonverbally. Okay, I think that's the end of our lecture. Thank you for listening all the way through, and I hope this all makes perfect sense. And in our upcoming lectures, we'll go through each one of these channels in a little more depth. Hopefully, I don't think we can ever do as much depth as a good textbook, but I'll try to pull out some important aspects of it and make suggestions for how we can all become better at communicating without speaking those words out. All right, you have a great afternoon, and we'll talk with you later.